Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 231 of the Sticks and the Six podcast. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, and I'm here with my co-host, Peter Baracchini. Peter, it's been a couple weeks, and of course, the Leafs gave us nothing to talk about over that time. But
Yep.
this week, they had to start going. They had to start getting some news breaking as we approach the tail end of the season. The playoff pictures start to set in for the rest of the league. And, of course, the Maple Leafs fire their GM, Brad Treliving. We will get to that in just a second. But before we do, because it's been 2 weeks, how you doing this week, buddy?
Yeah, it has been a while. A couple hectic, crazy weeks. March break and everything going on. It was a bit of a hectic week kind of thing, but ended it off with a nice, relaxing day over at the old Toronto Comic-Con. Just killed the day over there, and managed to find some nerd stuff. Dive in a little bit in terms of trying to find some rare finds in video games and stuff like that. No luck this time, but hopefully in the near future at Fan Expo, might be able to get my hands on something there.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots going on in the city of Toronto, of course. The Jays back in action, 3-1 on the season with some big games from their top three starters. Some bad news, obviously, for Ponce as well, but we'll see how that season. That was a rough outing. Outing. But we'll see how everything kind of plays out from there. Of course, I know I sent you a picture of this, but over the last week, you obviously know I'm a collector. Obviously, I'm not in the den right now, so you don't see all the collection in the background. But over the last week, anybody who's been following the McDonald's Star Sticks and this eccentric TikTok movement to rip and collect. Anyways, I got involved. I ripped a few. I wanted to see what I could get, and sure enough, got everything except for two. I had McDavid and I didn't have McDavid and Montembeault. Anyways, not huge on Montembeault. Anyways, I can't believe that was a selection. McDonald's do better.
You gotta get that rare Samuel Montembeault stick, man.
Yeah, do better. But I did. McDonald's Canada actually reached out to me on TikTok and let me know they wanted to send me a package. So of course I said yes. Like, why wouldn't I? Did my fact checking first, made sure it was a legit conversation, and I sent it to you. But I got a signed Austin Matthews Star Stick, which was beautiful. Unreal, dude. Like,
yeah,
I'm not talking like embedded, like kind of signature like you do on the MVP cheap cards. That
kind of like a screen print kind of thing too.
Yeah,
like version. Yeah,
it was a silver ink on the Star Stick. It was actually really sick. So add that to the collection, and I will update you. I did end up having. I had a second Celebrini. Shout out to Jim in Chatham who drove all the way down to trade me McDavid and Montembeault for the Celebrini. So I completed the set as well. A collector's glory, man.
It's complete, and you got Austin Matthews' signature on one of them too. Like,
That's right.
It doesn't get any better than that.
That's right. You can't go wrong.
Like you said, collector's dream at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, the big news, and shout out to Chris here, huge firing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about Vegas firing their coach with 8 games left in the season.
Yeah.
So that'll be a conversation. Of course, Bruce Cassidy out. John Tortorella, as the carousel continues to flow, is back in the game with the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's almost like poetic justice, the way that Mitch Marner leaves Toronto, a hostile environment, and is now going to be coached in the first round of the playoffs
by one of the most hostile vocal coaches in the league.
By one of the guys that's going to hold every player accountable, whether you like it or not. He will sit you even as a star player if you're not getting the job done. So, first off, your thoughts on the firing, your thoughts on John Tortorella now. I'm convinced he's going to make Paul Marner cry.
I'm convinced that Mitch Marner may be gone in 2-3 years if Tortorella stays on. Yeah. I mean, and if you need any indication on, Torts' opinions on younger players and the skill and everything like that, just ask guys like, Matvei Michkov and everything like that going on with everything that happened in Philly and all that. But digress. Really, again, came out of nowhere. Really, I do find it a bit of a surprise. Like if you do a coaching change, it's always within, you know, start of the season, midway of the season to try and salvage the season. And we've talked about Vegas before, how they've been okay, but they haven't been Vegas like we've seen them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The Pacific Division is an absolute joke of a division right now. I don't care what anybody else is going to say. That is the weakest division in all of hockey right now. They're benefiting by being in the playoffs by the loser point, and if they were in any other division, they'd be way out of it. They're just barely hanging on or fighting for their playoff lives. And now you have to make that the coaching decision. Their playoff spot is all but guaranteed, but I don't know. You're getting the guy that got you the Stanley Cup too. I just don't understand. And even for 8 games, I know that, teams want to call him, fine, whatever, but he's still technically under contract from what I heard. So why not just hang on to him until the season's done, even if you go into the playoffs? Like, what purpose does it really serve? And, I had, whatever the guests that come on, Patrick, one of my guys, reach out to both of us and ask about, like, what's going on with, like, the NHL and coaching right now. And I replied, it's the endless carousel. It's the old boys club where you get all these guys. Yeah, they have all the accolades. They have the resume. But at what point do you say it's just not cutting it out anymore? And I don't know if Torts is going to be able to manage to turn the ship around in Vegas when Bruce Cassidy was a hell of a coach and a little bit younger and still has a polished resume as of then. And I don't think it's a result of Cassidy. I think it's just a result of poor defense and goaltending. I think that's been the main issue for them all year. And then, Kelly McCrimmon goes out and gets Rasmus Anderson, and that still doesn't help your defensive issues. You're still relying on Aiden Hill. You got a revolving revolving carousel of players in net. And I don't know. I just don't see it as a major solution, and if it'll actually catapult them or push them forward into the playoffs, because I feel like they could be up for an early exit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the coaching change is going to be much of a difference. Like, I know John Tortorella came in. He says, I'm not going to make many changes, but there's still a system to learn. You're going to implement your system because you have to change something. The whole point of the coaching change was to change something.
Breath of fresh air.
Because what you were doing wasn't working, right? And again, fun stat of the day, since the trade for Rasmus Anderson, Calgary has more wins than the Vegas Golden Knights. Mm-hmm. Mitch Marner's on pace for his lowest point total since his second season in the league in terms of an 82-game season. They have no legitimate goal scorer aside from Pavel Dorofeyev, who
Jack Eichel too.
Yeah, I've had this argument with many people. Jack Eichel's not a goal scorer. Jack Eichel's a
well-rounded
playmaking forward who can put the puck in the net. He's not a 50-goal scorer. Mm-hmm. He's not Austin Matthews. He's not Leon Draisaitl. He's not Nathan McKinnon. He's
not even Connor McDavid.
Even McDavid, right?
Yeah.
He's not that guy, and that's not a knock on Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel's a phenomenal player, and anybody who says that he's not, needs to watch some more Vegas Golden Knights games. That said, if you can kind of pinch his offensive production off, all of a sudden the reliability is on Dorofeyev. Because let's be honest, Ivan Barbashev hasn't been exactly what you expected him to be. He plays a physical game. It's great. Thomas Hertl has been good, but not great.
Not a needle mover.
And you've brought in a lot of the same players that you already had in the organization. So Mitch Marner, great signing, hell of a player, but was he what you needed?
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that's happening even in Vegas right now. With a lot
I'm
of
glad you brought that up, that they're having that conversation too within the media.
A lot of the analysts and the media in Vegas are already questioning the move, saying that, they were talking about it at the 65-game mark, noting that he just was not fitting in. And it's not a case of him being a poor player. It's the fact that maybe this isn't exactly what the team needed.
Yeah.
Right? So that was interesting to me. The fact that you bring in John Tortorella, he says there's not going to be any changes. Well, That's part of the problem. And then you go to the standings here, and I'm just looking at the standings. Obviously, we're not going to have the 1-8 debate because let's be honest,
Yeah, Gary will never go back to
Gary
that.
never wants to go back
Yeah.
to 1 versus 8. Nor does he want to go 1-16 and make it a full league wide thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break it down to the Western Conference, so right now, as a division, so let's go to the wild card for a second here. The wild card, Vegas is third in the Pacific Division, meaning they've got the third seed, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be playing
Edmonton.
the Edmonton Oilers at this point in time with 7 games left in the year. If you take a look at it from a from a conference perspective, this team is 7th in the Western Conference. So
And they'd be playing the Dallas Stars if it was
they'd
1v8.
be playing the Dallas Stars, and they're nearly out of the playoffs. Like when you look at it, the Kings are only 6 points back.
Mm-hmm.
Nashville's only 5 points back. Winnipeg's only 6 points back. San Jose's only 7 points back. Like there's a conversation to be had here about teams that are undeserving making it in. And Vegas has had some great games this year. They've also had some absolute duds, and that's why they're sitting where they are. Now, from a league perspective, if you look at a league perspective and you're talking like 1-16, the majority of the Western Conference wouldn't even be in the playoffs. Edmonton would be on the outside. Utah's on the outside. Vegas is 19th in the league, so they're on the outside. And all of a sudden,
Anaheim just squeaked right in.
Anaheim just squeaks in. Minnesota's obviously up there, and Dallas is obviously up there, and Colorado's obviously up there. So at this point in time, like now you were talking about, we're trying to push and benefit markets that maybe don't deserve to have playoff hockey, and that's a Gary problem, right? Like that's a Gary problem saying I want my Vegas Golden Knights in, I want my Anaheim Ducks, I want. At the time, I'm sure he would have loved to see Arizona Coyotes in there if they could just find a way this weekend as well.
Well, despite the season that they had.
Right. So that, to me, becomes a problematic issue, and that's why they've led to this point of a coaching change and what have you. And I agree with you. I think Vegas is going to be an early exit, regardless of who they play in the first round, because their team just hasn't found a way to get it done. And sure, they'll come up in big moments. Eichel's going to step up. I'm sure Marner's going to have a good games 1, 2, and 3. If they get to 4, 5, and 6, then it's a different story. Eichel have a good game. Mark Stone's going to be back game 1 of the playoffs like he always is. So like there's something to be said about what they could do come playoff time. I don't think Akira Schmid and Aiden Hill are your winning tandem.
No.
Right?
Not even in a million years.
There's holes in this lineup. It's not about the coach. Bruce Cassidy wasn't the issue. The issue was the way the team was built and the personnel you have on the back end. So I wish Tortorella all the best. I'm excited to kind of see how he addresses some of the personalities in that room, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anyways, that being said, there was a big game for the Leafs. The Leafs Stanley Cup of the year was against the Anaheim Ducks this past week. And obviously there's a lot of conversation leading into it about how they were going to respond, because they didn't respond when the original injury happened to Austin Matthews. Domi said he was disappointed with himself. Nylander said he was... I don't even think he said he was disappointed with himself. He said he didn't see it. Riley was disappointed with himself. Even Cowan, who fought in that previous game, said that he was disappointed he didn't step in at that time because he was on the ice. All of a sudden, the game opens up. George Peros is on hand, and Wes McCauley might be one of the worst officials in the history of the NHL. Michael Pezzetta handed a game misconduct.
Warranted.
Somewhat, though. Like, if Peros was not in the stands, would that be a 10-minute misconduct?
I know it was very, very subtle. I know he got ejected for abuse to an official. But on the way, when the official's trying to get him back, because he was, getting in even more hot water with Pezzetta, I kind of felt like he may have just crossed that line a little bit. There were little shoves towards the linesman. I could understand that you can touch him, even if it's just a little shove. That's where I stand on that. I get it. It may have just been a little bit ticky-tacky, but a shove's a shove, even no matter what.
Yeah, I guess I look at it and say on any other given game, to
Mm-hmm.
me that you would have seen a 2-minute minor, whether it be boarding, however, and that roughing, whatever, that would have kind of been the end
Yeah.
of the line. They were anticipating more action, and that's exactly it was an anticipatory call,
They
right?
did it just for like circus or theater, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that one kind of affected me a little bit because I was like, man, it's Pizzetta. He's in the game for one single reason,
Mm-hmm.
and you're gonna kick him out because you're expecting what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
right? So nonetheless, you had to know Domi was coming out strong. Max went out. He fought Gudis. You know, I'll give credit to Gudis for standing up and having the fight at center ice and playing a game through injury, as they said. There's a lot of people out there, including, I believe Sid Sixero was one of the guys who said, "I don't give Gudis any credit. Like he still didn't fully answer the bell for the injury that he caused to Matthews." So
Yeah.
I want to get your take on it. Do you like, given the fights that happened? So Domi crushed Mintyukov in a fight. Mintyukov's second NHL fight. Obviously, Leo Carlson went out with an injury. Cutter Gauthier went out with an injury, something we talked about in the last episode. They're going to go after the Stars, play a physical game. Even Stolarz bumped their goalie on the way through. Easton Cowan got into a scuffle. Once again, Easton Cowan showing that he's playing with a lot of heart. But my question is, did Gudis pay for what the Leafs wanted him to pay for?
No, he didn't, because he barely threw a punch at Max Domi. He turtled after the Michael Pizzetta hit. He turtled and got ragdolled by Jake McCabe in that instance towards the end of that second period. He did not answer anything. He said he wanted to answer the call. If he wanted to answer the call, he would have thrown punches and would have defended his stance, or whatever you want to call his point of view or whatever. I think it's still garbage that he still did what he did and had a defense for it. But overall, he did not pay the price. He did not answer the bell. The Maple Leafs took it upon themselves to go after him and make him miserable. Great, but they should have still done it in the moment and gone after him when Matthews went down. To be honest, at that point, I don't care if it was Nylander, Riley, or whatever. I don't care if Max Domi did a David Clarkson and jumped over onto the ice and just wailed on him. I don't care. That's your goddamn captain out there that got injured. And I'm glad he was one of the ones, because I was debating with a lot of friends, who's going to be the one to send a message. Is it going to be Pizzetta? He did send one later on. Domi, Benoit, McCabe. The list goes on and on. They actually listed all 5 of their tough guys at the start.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was going to be one of those guys. Domi was the one that delivered it, and he gave him a couple good looks. I'm glad of that. Let him have it. But at the same time, the Maple Leafs got the retribution. Gudis didn't answer the call of what he intended to set out to. And I go back, there's a video by Curtis Gabriel online on Twitter where he has a story about Radko Gudis, where he's a guy that runs with a chicken with his head cut off, but when he has to answer the call and answer the bell, he is nowhere there. And he did post a clip of certain instances on that video where, Gudis is turtling. He's not even throwing a punch. If you're so tough, then throw a goddamn punch, man. If you're so right and you wanted to defend your stance, you would have thrown a punch. He didn't do anything in that moment. He was just holding back for dear life. So to me, this is a guy that can dish it, but he cannot take any of it.
Yeah, no, and funny you should mention Curtis Gabriel. I actually reached out to him on his live on TikTok, and we kind of went back and forth. I said I'd love to get him on. Hopefully we can get him on. But he's got some great content, and I was listening to a similar clip. I don't know if it was the exact same one, but it was a similar clip of, Gudis is great at running around and playing on the edge. But
the same one where he does a lot of good off-ice stuff, but on the ice, yeah. So that is the same clip, yeah.
So that I'm in agreement. Like we'll be quite frank. Max Domi delivered a fair amount of heavy hits, and Gudis ate a few punches there, but I still felt like there wasn't enough, right? And I don't think that you're going to get your retribution regardless of how the game went, regardless of anything else. You weren't going to get your retribution because still at the end of the day your captain was hit, you didn't answer the bell,
He's
and
still out.
and he's still out for the remainder of the season, including, having had surgery, being out 12 weeks, and that's just the beginning of the recovery, and who knows if the knee is ever the same. So to me, like, it's all fine and dandy at the end of the day that you went out there and you played the way that you did in the second game of a 2-game season series, but I want to see more hatred in that moment. And we have seen more physicality over the last week and a half from the Leafs, but it took losing your captain in an abysmal season to finally show a little life in that room, and that's frightening.
And it's good you brought up that they actually showed some life after that game. But I wonder if this is all just an act by the guys on the ice. Because of the fact that word got out about how everyone was talking about the lack of response in that moment, the fact that Treliving called guys that were on the ice of what happened to give him an earful that he was not happy. And this has all been said to, or has been kind of reported by Elliot Freeman on 32 Thoughts, the podcast, and I wrote about it as well. Like, at what point is this all just a gimmick or an act right now? Do you actually mean it? And are you guys actually standing up and fighting for one another? Or is this just to keep face and show that you are doing good just because everyone else is talking about it? And then you think it will get swept under the rug? Because let's face it, this whole season has been one where they did not have each other's back. Marchment running into Stolarz. I can't remember. Weiblatt, getting a good hit on Cowan on the rookie first couple games in, and he's just left defending on his own. We're starting to see more of that response right now. Cowan going after, Zadorov for Tavares. We're seeing a lot more standing up for players. But again, this season is all because of what happened with Austin Matthews, and this should have been happened earlier on in the season before that. Because if this happened on anywhere else, on any other team, and I think we already talked about this, blood will be drawn if this was any other player or other star player on another team.
I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because anybody who watches the Chuck Brothers podcast, they were all over how they'd stand up for, but then who got hit on Ottawa? Claude Giroux? And nobody. Not one person on the ice, including Brady Tkachuk. Including Brady Tkachuk, went and did anything about it. So it's
double standard.
I think it's a culture. It's a double standard. It's very hypocritical, but at the same time, I think it's a cultural thing right now where a lot of players, whether
stand up for certain players, but others not.
I don't even know if it's that. It's like, what's going on in the room that's causing this fray of like people not answering the bell. You know what I mean? Like, it's. Anyways, I don't have the answer to it, as somebody so kindly pointed out on TikTok earlier this week that I'm not a fly on the wall in the room, so I don't know that Matthews is a leader. Well, my response was, you're not a fly in the room either, and so you don't know that he's not, right? But we're not there in the moment to see what the cultural issue is in the room, it's.
And Pelley addressed that too in his presser too, which we will get to that in a moment. But I just thought I'd just subtly bring that up as well in terms of the culture.
Yeah, 100%. Anyways, I like your Spike said. Spike said Gudis broke the code twice. First with the knee, then nothing. Not throwing a punch. 100%. Like you're not in any way wrong there. So, so that brings us to this next point. The shift that's happened in the shift that's now happened is one that happened with the entire team, right? So Brad Treliving obviously fired pre-game, which was kind of interesting, ahead of the matchup against the Anaheim Ducks, nonetheless. And now there's a lot more question marks. And before we get to the question marks, before we get to, who could be filling in for this, for Brad Treliving, the question that we have is, should it have happened earlier? Should have it happened earlier in the season when things started to go wrong. You could see that there was no consistency. You could see that the team wasn't going to overcome its issues. Should Brad Treliving have been there even at the deadline?
Absolutely not. No. And it's clear to see why he shouldn't have been there at the deadline, because he did not get, fair value for what he should have got compared to what other players did. To be honest, everyone has been pointed to the fact that that Kraken game where nobody stood up for Stolarz went downhill. I honestly think that it was even starting to show during preseason where it wasn't even that great, but that's preseason. We're able to overlook things. We can be a little bit analytical, but season hasn't even started yet. To be honest, they were outside of a playoff spot, although a couple points here and there. But to me, if you're outside of a playoff spot by U.S. Thanksgiving, your chances have gone down significant, because teams that have been out there and make the playoffs kind of here and there, kind of all over the place. It's very rare. And lo and behold, the Maple Leafs are well outside of a playoff spot right now. I think he should have been gone then to try and regroup and get something going. Because look what happened with the Buffalo Sabres. They fired Kevin Adams, even though that he was the whole architect of that team. And now look at them. Where are they? Top of the Atlantic Division. Something that we did not even expect at this point.
A 100-point team.
Yeah. And all because they fired their GM. Could this have been the? I'm not saying it could have been the same, because hindsight's 2020. But if they fired Treliving earlier in the season, around U.S. Thanksgiving, end of November, beginning of December, at least would have given the Maple Leafs hope. And then you could have had that interim duo that is in place right now with Brandon Pridham and Ryan Hardy, where they're running the show for now. And I at least would have had more hope for them heading into the deadline to make moves and utilize their assets a little bit more, because we've seen how both of them can handle running. Again, an AHL farm team is different from an NHL one, but with Pridham being the assistant manager and Hardy running the show with the Marlies as well, both have that repertoire and they know what they're doing. So I would have at least thought that if you had those two guys in, they could have been a little bit better, but it's too little too late. The deadline passed. You did not get value. You should have gotten a first for Bobby McMann, or at least 2 seconds. You got a second and a fourth. You got a conditional second. You weren't going to get a lot for Lawton anyways, but if you had a second without any condition, that at least would have been a win. And if it weren't for the Nicholas Watt trade where he got a first rounder and everyone was like, okay, Tree, you're cooking. Let's try and keep this going. If it weren't for that move, the Maple Leafs would have had a feeling grade for me at the deadline. At least a D-, D, whatever. But it was not great. And that Watt trade bumped it up a little bit. But with Treliving running the show at the deadline, it should have been a different name and a different guy, even if it was on an interim basis. There was no way he should have been running the team. And even the fact that he kept on saying, it lies solely with me. I want to be the one to try and turn things around. But usually if you're saying that, you are the problem and you're coming out saying that, what makes you think to believe that, or for everyone to believe you're going to be the one to turn things around and make it right when in fact you didn't?
Yeah,
and
no, absolutely.
It's just really hard to see it that way, but he just should have been gone. He shouldn't have been there at the deadline.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree. No, I couldn't agree more. And Gary says Tree and Berube should have both been gone in November and perhaps in a much better position. I don't disagree. The start of the season was abysmal. I think that for the Leafs to be where they were in November was insane. Having lost, you sent out a tweet, Peter, for the amount of points that you had with Michelli and Nick Waugh, and they made up for the difference of what Marner brought to that lineup. So there wasn't that much of a shift in terms of offensive production. So for them to be where they were and not really showing much heart, not really showing much focus, consistency, it should have happened a long time ago. You should not have gone into the deadline with a GM that you're planning to fire at the end of the season.
Or you were on the fence with at some point, whether he was going to survive or not.
Yeah, and I say that looking at Bobby McMann's numbers since going to Seattle, 7 goals in 9 games, 11 points in 9 games.
That's not worth a first?
That's what I'm exactly. So, I mean, this guy's going to be, by the end of the year, this guy's going to be a 30-goal scorer. Like
Yeah.
he needs 4 goals to become a 30 goal scorer. That's to me that's insane that you couldn't find a way to either one lock that up for a decent price or two, get the pieces that you should have gotten for that pick.
I just want to point out that I had people laughing at me for thinking that Bobby McMahon was worth a first.
It's funny when you give him the
There you
ice
go.
time, what he's able to do, right?
Exactly. You're paying for what he's doing right now.
Yeah,
That's how teams operate.
100%, 100%. Anyways, before we get to the next point, just a quick word here from our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook. An official sports betting partner of the NHL is built for the fastest game on ice. With player props and live betting, every shift, every shot, and every save gives you options to get in on the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. I actually just took out a future on the Buffalo Sabres to win the Cup at plus 700. New customers bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, wager tax pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 plus in most states. Void in Ontario. Restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer. Copyright 2026. NHL. All rights are reserved. Anyways, so in saying that, knowing that he should have been fired earlier, let's take a quick look back at his overall tenure. Like, I mean, I don't want to
Let's not and say we did though.
Yeah, I don't want to get crazy into it because I think we all know that it was an ultimate failure by the end of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like you lost Martin. It was the same, and let's be honest. Treliving has done what he can with what he's been given as well. But Calgary was a huge blow up, right? You lost Gaudreau, you lost Tkachuk, you lost Monahan. Those were your 3 major pieces.
Hands were tied then too, but at least he got a decent return.
Yes.
For a Tkachuk.
Yes, and now you look at it and you come to the Leafs and you've traded away Marner, you've traded away first round picks, you've traded away Bobby McMahon, a guy you've developed from the ECHL into your lineup as an everyday player. You traded away a guy in Scott Laughton who wanted to be there, maybe had more heart than anybody, but had no playing time. And now all of a sudden you're sitting here, hands tied, and this team is not going to be a contender for, let's say, the next 5 years. How important is it now to look at the next GM and say this is a do or die for this team when you're talking about the next 5 to 7 years?
It's interesting because Pelley said he wants to go for a retool more than a rebuild, but ultimately it falls on whoever the GM is going to be. And if that GM thinks that there's no saving this team and Tree managed to do a lot of damage in 3 years, then you have no choice but to opt up for a rebuild. Okay. See, here's the thing. If they retain their first round pick this year, I think that's at least a big step in the right direction. But a lot needs to happen because there's like a gap of like 4 points separating the Maple Leafs and the 5th spot right now. So a lot needs to happen at this point for them to get that. And then you could draft a defender in Carson Carrolls, Keaton Verhoff, a center in Caleb Malhotra. If you get that pick, whoever it is, I don't care. You get that blue chip prospect. That's at least someone you can have in the near future, like in the next year or two, to come in right away and make an impact. Right now, it's going to be, it could be 5 years before anything gets done and you see any sort of success. And it's all because of Brad Treliving making the moves that he did and not getting the necessary pieces back in order to still make this team as competitive as is. I want to believe that maybe this is just a one-off and that the Maple Leafs playing right now should have been the team we had hoped to see and maybe fight for a playoff spot or a wild card spot. But that is very wishful thinking right now. And for the future, I am very bleak because of what's happened the last 2-3 years. If we do get a GM that's able to not necessarily cut corners, but retool the right way, then I'm all for it. I will start to believe again. But until that happens, I am very hesitant to believe that with everything that's happened, with everything that was moved out, the Maple Leafs have any chance of being successful the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, no, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know. You want to address this comment here? I got a comment that says Leaf fans only care about personal stats because Donnie here doesn't think that Bobby McMann is a worthy player. Thinks that Seattle and Toronto are both on the same path to no playoffs because they had Bobby McMahon on their team. I don't get his comments.
I don't buy that. No. I mean, if you're looking at personal stats, Bobby McMahon already was closing in on 20 goals with the Leafs, and he already has almost 10 with Seattle right now. It doesn't. I don't know. I'm not going to comment much further on that because it's not even about personal stats right now. It's about the fact that this is a player that's being more successful in a spot that he already was with the Maple Leafs.
I mean, granted, Donnie came in about 4 minutes ago, so he didn't catch where we talked about everything to do with the team rather than singular players. He says he's like Bunting. I don't know if I buy that either. Bunting's
I'd say I would probably have a Bobby McMahon over Michael Bunting now.
Yeah, any day of the week. Anyways, Donnie, I appreciate the input. But yeah, anyways, the idea of what Treliving's done to this team, and it's not like we can't sit here and put the full blame on Treliving. I mean, he inherited what Dubas left, and Dubas kind of did the same thing. They were all about trading first to try and get over the hump instead of trying to build.
But at least everything was kind of in place.
Things were kind of in place, but like there was. We go back to the Elliot Friedman report of like, you know, a guy like Marner, he was upset since his entry-level contract.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there was some disappointment from him since his entry-level contract. We're talking 6-7 years ago, right? Like, it's not – this isn't something that, you know, Treliving was the main root cause of. It wasn't something that, you know, maybe Dubas was the main root cause of. But at the same time, Dubas ended up giving them exactly what they wanted. It caused this. It created this expectation within the team, entitlement within the team, and it landed the Leafs in a very difficult spot financially when it came to like working out deals in season and signing free agents and all that kind of jazz as well, right? So that part made it tough on people like, you know, Brad Treliving to come in and kind of change that culture. Then all of a sudden you have, you know, Morgan Riley call it a team-friendly deal. John Tavares call it a team-friendly deal. And there's there's a shift of like people wanting to take less to win the game, right? And that's very interesting to me because that part was Treliving. That part was him going to those players and having those negotiations and getting those deals done. And unfortunately, Marner chose to walk, chose to not have any part of the negotiation process, and chose to walk at the end of last season. And to an extent, there's nothing that Brad Treliving could have done differently. Mm-hmm. In saying that, his goal was to try and get the pieces needed to get the team back to, you know, a first round win, a second round win, and he might have done that. But the way he did it, and then the coach that he brought in, who didn't, as Gary says in the comments here, the players weren't deployed properly throughout the season.
100%.
That ultimately hurt the Leafs. And I do think, in part, I'm not saying Craig Berube is a bad coach, but in part, that affected the overall approach of the team to each game. And in a sense, Brad Treliving is partially paying the price for a poor coaching job from Craig Berube this season.
No, 100%. And you said it in the best possible way. I mean, and even Gary too, with the fact that, fourth liner playing 10 minutes a night when he was brought in to be a 3C and you bumped him down last year. Where's that disconnect? Obviously, players are going to feel a little slighted by that, because if they're supposed to be an integral piece, they should have been moved up further up in the lineup. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. There's, I don't want to continue going on because I'm just going to repeat what you and Gary have said. So yeah, I totally agree that player deployment, the utilization, everything is as is, and a reason why effectively they have been in that downfall too. Because even so, like, you're telling me that even throughout the whole entire year with the issues on defense, Philip Myers was your best defenseman that you could have inserted in that 5-6 spot. You're telling me that you couldn't have called up someone else mid-season, like a William Villeneuve, like a Noah Chadwick, who has looked kind of decent as a Toronto Marley and could get possibly a look next year?
If you're this bad anyways, why would you not try and see what you have in the pipeline?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, I'm not understanding that.
And now's the perfect time to try and get some of those guys from the pup lineup right now.
Here's a good question from Mario.
Yeah.
Can you make Nylander your second line center and put JT on the wing on third line?
They tried that experiment before with Nylander at center. It just doesn't quite work out. And if the way that Nylander's played defensively with the back checks this year, even in previous past seasons, I thought last year he started to show a little bit more of a defensive presence. But this season, I don't think Nylander at 2C would probably work out if it didn't work out in the past.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Donnie says that Edmonton was not interested in Bobby McMahon. That no Stanley Cup. It
was already out there, Donnie. Sorry, man. It was already reported. Let's just stop right there, man.
He's saying all we do is listen to Leaf. Donnie's got to get his head in check. Anyways, in saying that, so obviously, with the firing came a press conference with Keith Pelley and what he had to say, and for most it was quite disappointing. Like it was okay. I have to address this. Elliot says a lot of things that aren't true, or that ain't true.
All right, that's your opinion.
But he believes Kipper.
That says it all.
Oh,
that's it.
All right, Trailer Park Donnie with the best comments of the show. Appreciate it. Mario says, "How do you address second line center for the next year?" That's part of the problem, is that they don't have the pieces that they need.
You just got to roll with Matthews JT. I mean, even out there in the like free agent market, even if whoever comes in makes a decent trade to get a valuable 2C, great, but you got to give up a lot of assets for that. So I don't see how they can address it by just going with what they have right now. That's the only thing.
Gary says a broke clock is right twice a day, Donnie. Oh, Gary, we love having you on here, buddy. Anyways, yeah, I agree with you. Keith Pelley's press conference was ultimately very disappointing. Very out of check with what's going on with the team. Noting that, the team's going to go in an analytical direction. That's fair. It seems to be the way that the league's going. Went on a tangent about AI and how it affects the overall decision making of the team, which I guess you could go that route. Anyways, the point being is that there needs to be a president of hockey ops, because Keith Pelley is trying to operate all of MLSE, and in doing so, he's trying to be in touch with all these teams at the same time, trying to figure out what's going on, and yet he missed on the Leafs this year, right? In a big way, and that goes back to should Treliving have been there for the deadline? No. Should Berube have still been there? Probably not. and Keith Pelley just missed in a big way, right? So in saying that, um, his his press conference, one of the things he noted that they didn't see the Habs and Sabres coming. Now, I found this one interesting. I know most people did because the Sabres maybe not. Like we knew that they were going to get better eventually, maybe not this quickly, especially on paper.
Mm-hmm.
The Habs, I don't know how you missed it. It's like standing on a train track waiting for a veer rail to come smoke you. That's what
They
it felt
made
like.
the playoffs last year.
Right. And they put up a great season and they have an incredible core. So hence my reference to being standing in the middle of the train tracks and watching the Montreal Canadiens come towards you. It's like getting walloped with seeing the light come towards you.
Know
Just
well
standing
what's
there.
happening. Yeah.
So that one's kind of stuck with me. That comment stuck with me. And then of course, the note of like analytics and the way they're looking to go. And I want to bring this up because one name that came up just today, and Jeff Merrick was the one who actually tweeted it out. And it's an interesting one, is John Chayka.
Yeah.
Is John Chayka. Now, in saying that, there are a number of valid candidates to take over this GM spot. There's also the conversation of whether or not the Leafs add back in the president of hockey ops. There's the Mark Hunter conversation. There's the Mike Gillis conversation. Yeah. Obviously those are some names that come to mind, but it's going to go in a different direction, right? Than where it's been. And I think what's interesting, another couple names I saw brought up. Chris Pronger was a name that I saw brought up.
Yeah.
Jason Spezza was another name I saw brought up, and shout out to Jason Spezza and his family, who Jason lost his dad this week.
Condolences.
Our condolences, of course. But there's a guy who would be interesting as well because he was a guy who said, I want to be a part of this franchise, and laid it all on the line when he was there. And
was with Dubas and then left with him to Pittsburgh.
Exactly. So that one's interesting to me as well. And again, these names are like there's the obviously Pridham is an internal guy that has to come to mind. I mean the guy's a miracle
salary
worker
cap
when it comes
guru.
to the cap.
Yeah.
So I want to get your take on Keith Pelley's overall press conference, some of the things that he said, but two, I want to get your feeling on maybe your top two candidates. If you had to, in saying that, I want to note that the Leafs need to go through the process. They can't. It's not about picking the carousel. It's not about going old boys club. It's about finding the right guy or woman in this case. Like Haley Wickenheiser would be a great candidate, and I truly believe, having been part of the organization, that she needs to be considered. But they need to go through the process, and I think that's where I'm sitting right now. Is that I'm okay if they go right to the very end, right before the draft, and maybe through the draft with Pridham and was it Ryan Clark as well?
Yeah, Ryan Hardy.
Ryan Hardy, sorry,
yeah.
Clark. I don't know where I got Clark from.
Initially,
Shane Doan's another name here. Mario brought up
because he
Shane
is a
Doan.
special assistant to the GM, not assistant GM, but special assistant. So I think, and Alex, our good friend Alex Hobson, made a good point about Pelley's conference. I think it may have just been a little bit overblown given what has transpired, the frustration from the fans and everything like that. And there are some things that I agree with him. I do think that there needs to be a culture change because of what happened recently. And I think Pelley took note of that, where you look at the culture of, TFC, the Blue Jays, the Raptors. There's a culture and a sense of camaraderie with all those teams right now. So I think that needs to be implemented right there. I agree with him with that culture and that aspect needs to change immediately to be for the Maple Leafs, because you're not going to win anything if you don't have that. Number two, that whole blindsided by the Habs and Sabres thing. Yeah, I do agree the Sabres were a little bit surprising, but it shouldn't have been considering what they had in the pipeline, what was coming up. They were just underachieving year after year. I just think that there was going to be a time where they did pop off, and they did. So to me, to say you're blindsided by both them and the Habs have been building up and getting better each year, don't buy that at all. I think that was the dumbest comment that he had made.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that, again, with a lot of fans, there's going to be a lot of questions about uncertainty, the plan, what's going forward, how is he going to be involved in all this? But this is why you have that president of hockey ops, to be that go-between between the general manager and the owner. But I think Pelley is going to be there with everything being done, but I think he's going to give all the control to everyone within the organization. He should have confidence in them, and he should have faith. That should be the main thing right there. Change the culture. That's what I mean. Another thing I was about to say, you have this culture. He says you have foundational pieces in there. Thank you, Mario, for bringing that up as well, because it just triggered it in my mind. The foundational pieces that you have not gotten the job done over the last 9 years. That to me is something that still needs to be addressed, where you need to probably get rid of one or two more guys to break that up. Who that's going to be, whether it's going to be a combination of Nylander, Riley, or one or the other, I don't know. But Matthews is for sure safe. JT wants to stay as a Leaf forever. That to me, if you want to get significant pieces back, you need to move on from one of those two guys. That'll really help boost everything forward. I in terms of going back to my comment about like uncertainty, the faith and everything like that, I get where he's trying to come from, but with everything that's transpired this year, you can't help but leave everyone wanting more, and not just with this whole business-like mentality and talk of the conference. He should have given a little bit more clarity. We just didn't get it, but hopefully that'll come in the near future, and I think the GM should address that. Now, going to my top choices for GM, it was going to be Jim Nill until the Dallas Stars said, hold on a sec, we are not going to let this guy walk for free. And rightfully so, because the Dallas Stars would not be where they are without Jim Nill. There is talk of Doug Armstrong, but he's still under contract with the St. Louis Blues. He's going to be a president and transitioning help with Alex Steen for his GM role. Don't see that happening. Again, to be honest, yeah, you mentioned a lot of names out there. I think Mike Gillis and or Chris Pronger as president of hockey ops, I think both would be fantastic ads. Gillis at the time did work wonders for the Canucks, and the Canucks were decent under his, mentorship, guidance, and vision. Pronger, I think he has the same level of Shanahan, but I think he's more in tune with today's game. I think both of them as leading the charge would be really great. In terms of GM, would Pronger be a good GM? Absolutely. It was on Leafs Morning Take where Pronger said that he isn't closing the door on anything. He would want to be in a front office role. So there leaves that. To be honest, it's very slim pickings right now, but maybe hiring internally isn't the worst option. And I think with Pridham, with everything that he's done to what he's seen under Dubas, under Treliving as well, I think maybe he would have had different approaches with Treliving. If, he was more in charge or had more of a voice, I think he would have done that. I think Ryan Hardy, he's a great visionary as well. We've seen what he's done in the USHL with the Chicago Steel at times as well. I think those two guys may have an edge, and even Haley Wickenheiser, like you mentioned, because of her role as player development, she knows what's going on, how the lives are affected daily, what she's doing to help these players come up with the development camps for the rookies, the players at the pro level. To be honest, I think all three, even if she gets another, you make her an assistant GM as well, and you have one GM and you have two to try and spread out the workload kind of thing, where you have one and then you have the other, and then you have these meetings constantly of what's going on to talk about with your pro scouting, amateur scouting, everything like that. Again, it was Jim Nill as my front runner, but right now we'll see what happens, because there are other names out there. John Chaika, I don't like what he did with the Coyotes the first round.
It was an interesting. I just saw it when when we hit the live button here, I saw the mention. I saw Jeff Merrick mention it. And I had thought about it myself actually. When I heard Pelley say something about analytics, I was like, imagine
we already had that.
Imagine, right?
We already had that, but
yeah, no, absolutely. So here's what I've got, and we'll get to the. There's a lot of comments going on right now. Mario and Gary, thank you for all the interactions. It's
Thanks
amazing.
Talk,
you guys have a lot of insight and and really appreciate it. Mike Gillis as your president of hockey ops. Okay. Yep. My top 3 choices right now, and I'm going away from the carousel a little bit for the GM, is you go either Pronger, who has like a no bullshit attitude.
Yeah. Fair.
You go Shane Doan, who, has been in the game for so long and understands what it's going to take. Or you go Haley Wickenheiser. And I like Haley Wickenheiser because I think she adds a new perspective in the sense that she's been with the organization, but she also saw the game from a different side of things, right? So it gives you that ability to kind of adjust the mentality of what's going on in the room.
I'm glad you went with a 2 assistant GM approach too.
Mm-hmm. And get them in, get all of those guys in the front office, and I think you're going to have a room where there can be a lot of communication, a lot of open discussion, and it'll change the perspective and the overall direction of this team. And then I think Berube's gone sooner than we think.
And Cassidy's the guy that comes in.
Pete DeBoer's a guy that keeps coming to my head. Pete DeBoer keeps coming to my head because let's not forget, Pete DeBoer was in Kitchener, I believe, when he was in the O, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How fun would it be to bring it back to Ontario?
Very.
And really a coach who's had so much success, maybe take the reins of a team that needs that success and try and work that way. I like what Gary's saying. He's a finisher, but he's not a builder.
Yes.
So this is where all your other comments, guys, Mario and Gary combined, comes into play. So Mario says, if 34 doesn't want to stay, then it's a rebuild. 100%. So there's your first conversation when you get your GM in place.
Yeah.
That's your first conversation. Where do you want to go with
or
this?
Rebuild. That's the main thing. Yeah.
You go right to Austin Matthews and say, where do you want to go with this?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sticking around? And if you are, we're gonna do our absolute best to draw in players that are willing to play around you. But we need to find a way to shift the culture. And then Gary with a comment here, what he learned about his leadership in years of the military is that people need to lose their egos. They need to have it squashed to create culture change, and that's what needs to happen, right? They need to start from the very bottom. They need their trips back to like the good old days of the Leafs, going out to Muskoka and having like a team building event and just getting everyone out together, families and young guys included, and just trying to find a way to one, rebuild that culture, but 2, shift the mentality of like the Leafs are first round losers, right?
Yeah,
that's got to change because right now it's a mental game. It's a major mental. And you talk about any of the stars, McKinnon has dealt with an off ice therapist, and just to get them back like a sports therapist, to get them their heads back in the game and how they can approach it. Right, that's what needs to happen.
And it's a good thing that, Mario, you did bring up that, 30, you got to have 34 in the conversation. And I think that's the one thing where front office and 34 have that transparency going, is because they've had meetings, especially with the contracts before. What do you want? What do you want to see? They've at least had the talks with him before. The reason why I'm a little bit optimistic right now is because of that communication and transparency with him. If Matthews is even on board for a rebuild, great. But again, it all comes down to him.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Mario says, do the St. Louis model, bringing in Steen as GM and Armstrong mentoring him, then Pronger as GM, and then someone mentoring him, maybe Bergeron. I've seen Bergeron.
Gillis would still be a good fit as
I was going to say
ops if Pronger was GM, because Gillis has that experience as an executive.
I was going to say, and for me, like, Gillis has seen a little bit of success in terms of getting his team to where it needs to be, i.e. Vancouver. Bob Gainey would. There's a good name too. Bob Gainey's an interesting name. He's been out of the game for a little bit, but I'm not sure Bergevin's the guy, and I've seen his name floated around quite often. I'm just not convinced he's the guy. But all of these names are floating around. It's going to be a crazy end of the year for the Leafs. It's going to be an insane summer for the Leafs. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's still a suggestion out there that. There's still a suggestion by Toronto media, Donnie, that that players are still on the move. So we'll listen to Toronto media in this sense, and it's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be an interesting year to say the least.
I will say this: the thing with Mike Gillis is the reason he got fired because at that time. Probably looking at the wrong stats right now. I'm definitely looking at the wrong year in stats right now. When Gillis was fired, that was kind of like the end of the year or era with the Sedin twins, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it kind of floated into the whole Luongo. The Luongo deal was an issue.
Yeah.
The Schneider deal happened. There was a lot going on at that time.
Yeah. And I just want to double check. Yeah, because actually, no, that was like just really bad years for the Canucks as well. And then they started to pick up with, 2014, 15, 16. So it wasn't like the downfall of the Canucks at that point, but he did have everything in place, and he did take them to that Stanley Cup in 2010, 2011 in that final. So
no success. Fuck it then. We won't even bring in Mike Gillis. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, it's an interesting conversation, right? And the best part about Toronto media, the best part about the Toronto Maple Leafs is that it's always going to be Leaf centric, regardless of which market you're in. The Leafs pop up because
we're all about the Leafs, man.
We're maybe the most hated fan base in all of professional sports, but outside of Yankee fans. But anyways,
yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun year. I think it's going to be an interesting offseason. I'm looking forward to the draft. We're going to have a lot of conversation to have. Ron Francis, Mario's just throwing these. I love this.
Mario, keep them coming, man.
Mario, we're gonna make Mario or Mario. We're gonna make a dartboard and just start putting like possible GM or president of hockey ops faces on there, and we're gonna just start throwing darts. That's how we're gonna choose this next one.
Get a spinning
wheel. Who in management has ever enjoyed working for their owner? Apparently, he's a special sort of difficult. Hey,
not wrong.
I'll be honest with you. I've always had a problem with authority. I'm still doing all right. Look at this, Mario. I'm a Leaf fan since 1969. I love it. I love it.
There you go.
So the heartbreak's real. We're with you, Mario.
Right there.
We're with you, and I hope you hit that follow button and you tune in more often because I love the conversation that you brought this week. Anyways, Gary's talking to Aquilini. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Don't wanna get involved with that.
Yeah.
That's a little touchy subject right now. With
it is.
Yeah.
Media credentials being ripped out of the hands of Vancouver Canucks writers.
I mean, we're not credentialed, but we're still not touching that.
Yeah. I don't even think I'd want to go to a game right now as a credentialed writer. There's too much pressure on what you can and cannot ask.
Yeah.
Anyways, Mario, I'm glad you joined.
Thanks,
I really do hope you hit the subscribe button on YouTube here and join us next week. Gary's joined us almost weekly for our episodes, so we appreciate you, Gary, and all those who commented. We got a lot of respect. Yeah, Spike as well. We got a lot of respect for you guys tuning in on a weekly basis to
Chris.
Chris, and kind of shoot the shit a little bit about our Maple Leafs. We will have a fun end to the season. We will have a fun off season. It's going to be a lot of news, a lot of Leaf talk. So as always, we're going to be running right through the playoffs, right through the off season. So we got a lot of that stuff going on. Until next week, episode 232. Peter, you got anything you want to throw in there before we close out, buddy?
Keep an eye out for something I got in the works about Treliving's worst moves, and I think you could all know what's going to be on there. Not even going to spoil it.
I like it. All right. Well, guys, until next time, until next week, make sure you tune in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're watching over here on TikTok, make sure you hammer that like button and make sure you hit follow. Until next week on episode 232, this is 231 for us here at the Sticks and the Six podcast. That's all we got with our friend Alex Hobson and his hit 25.